I never would have thought I'd share this. But life sometimes pushes us toward unexpected revelations. My name is Martina. I'm 47 years old, and my story may seem strange. I'm a single mother. My son John is my greatest achievement. For many years, it was just the two of us against the world. Today, he's 24, a young man destined for a brilliant future. But to me, he'll always be the same child who sought comfort in my arms after his nightmares. Our relationship has always been close, perhaps too close, and everything was going as usual until one night changed everything. John came home after a long day of studying and working. His eyes betrayed exhaustion. His movements were slow. "Mom, I feel a bit weird," he said in a soft voice. Worried, I suggested he rest, made him some tea, and covered him with a blanket. But instead of going to his room, he ended up in mine. The cold wind rattled the window, and the house seemed to fall silent. I sat beside John, wanting only to comfort him. But something began to shift. Not immediately, but gradually. He moved closer, his face almost against my hand. There was more than just seeking comfort. The subtle detail, the rhythm of his breathing, the lightness of it made my head spin. Should I have gotten up, created a physical barrier between us? But something held me back. Then I noticed a change in the blanket's contour, an unconscious reaction that made my heart race faster. My breathing became irregular. Maybe it was just a reflex, but my intuition told me something more was happening. For a moment, I imagined how any other mother would have reacted. Make a joke, downplay the situation, but his head rested on my shoulder, his face so close I could hear him. My thoughts were confused, the embarrassment growing. When he finally opened his eyes, our gazes met. There was a new intensity in his look that I had never noticed before, as if he were trying to read my thoughts, searching for an answer in the depths of my eyes. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to stay calm. His voice was softer than I expected, almost a whisper. He didn't answer right away. Instead, his hand, resting on mine, began to move. His fingers slid gently, almost imperceptibly. A shiver ran through me. What was happening in that moment? Why did these gestures seem so familiar and yet so new? Why did each one resonate in me with something deeper? That small, simple contact sent a subtle current through my entire being. My heart pounded, and I hated myself for not being able to control the wave of emotion flooding me. But there was something painfully human in it, something that transcended the roles of mother and son. "John," I said softly, trying to find my voice. He paused, as if expecting me to say something important, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I stayed there, looking into his eyes, which stared back at me with a mix of curiosity and depth. The room's air was thick with this unfinished conversation. Every passing second stretched, making everything tense. I could hear my heart beating. That accelerated rhythm made me feel both alive and terrified. John moved again, his arms slightly open as if about to speak. But instead, he simply smiled softly, shyly, with a hint of vulnerability, but unexpected confidence. "I'm okay, Mom," he said in a low, trembling voice. "I just needed this." A new sensation overwhelmed me, one I had never experienced before. It haunted me day after day. After that night, everything returned to normal on the surface. John continued his studies and work as if nothing had happened, but personally, that moment stayed etched in my memory. I thought about it constantly, even when he was in another room. What was happening to me? I spent days trying to ignore those thoughts, but they returned with redoubled force every time I saw him. One evening, as we ate dinner together, John didn't notice me staring at him distractedly. His movements had become so familiar. His way of running his hand through his hair when focused, his gentle smile that lit up the room, even the deeper tone of his voice, now different. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked in a calm voice, but with a hint of concern. "Yes, just tired," I replied quickly, forcing a smile I hoped looked convincing. He nodded, but I knew he sensed something more. It felt like we were both walking on delicate ground, trying not to awaken something hidden, yet lacking the courage to name it. After dinner, he went to his room, and I stayed alone in the kitchen, washing dishes. The hot water ran over my hands, but my thoughts were far away. I relived that moment in bed when silence enveloped us. That night, I lay in bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I tossed and turned until I heard light footsteps in the hallway. My heart raced faster. His door creaked slightly, and I saw the soft hallway light extinguish as he passed. I waited a few minutes, trying to calm my pounding heart, but curiosity and anxiety took over. I got up, walked barefoot on the cold floor, and approached his door. Everything was quiet inside, but I knew he wasn't sleeping. Something inside pushed me to open that door, but my mind told me to go back to bed. That inner struggle left me tense, confused, and strangely alive. Before I could decide, the door opened slowly. John stood there motionless, looking surprised, and something else I couldn't identify. "I heard a noise," I lied, trying to justify my presence. John didn't answer immediately. He stepped aside a little, leaving the door open like a silent invitation. I entered the room, the air filled with a tension that seemed alive, pulsating. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd noticed before. But this time, I didn't look away. I observed every movement, every detail. "Can't sleep?" I asked, trying to ease the tension. But my words only heightened the moment. He shook his head. "No, you." I shook my head in turn, saying nothing. Silence settled again between us, heavy and loaded with meanings neither of us wanted to acknowledge. I sat beside him on the bed. His proximity made my whole being react on its own, ignoring my mind's warnings. "John, everything's okay," I said softly, trying to calm things. But instead of relief, my words only increased the tension. He turned toward me. Our eyes met, and in that look, I read a reflection of my own confusion, desire, fear, and something inevitable. "I don't know what's happening," he finally said in a low, hoarse voice. "I can't stop thinking about that night." My heart beat faster. I wanted to say the same, but no words came. Instead, my hand moved toward his, a soft, almost timid gesture, but full of meaning. He didn't pull away. On the contrary, he responded as if he'd been waiting for it. "John," I murmured, not knowing what else to say. Words couldn't explain it. He leaned closer. His face was so near mine, I could sense his presence. My heart pounded hard, and I realized we were about to cross a line we should never have crossed. But in that instant, rules, roles, conventions vanished. There was only us. When we came together, the world around us seemed to disappear. It was a soft, hesitant connection, but so charged with emotion that I couldn't think of anything else. I should have stopped. I should have laughed it off, but I couldn't. There was something in that moment no logic could explain. He looked into my eyes, searching for a response, for confirmation. This shouldn't have happened, I whispered, trying to find my voice. John shook his head. But it did, and now the question hung unanswered. But in that moment, I realized there was no going back. When I woke the next morning, the light filtering through the window seemed brighter than usual, as if the house itself was trying to pull me back to reality. I was still in my room, but everything felt different. The weight of last night's emotions lingered, clinging to my thoughts. My mind was in turmoil, but my heart had already decided. I tried to justify what happened as a mistake, a confusion born from our closeness. After all, for so long, it had been just John and me. But no matter how hard I tried to find an explanation, something kept pulling me back to that night. Every moment, every look replayed endlessly in my head. Was he the same? That question echoed in my soul, carrying a whirlwind of contradictory emotions. I didn't know how to behave around John afterward. Should I talk to him or pretend nothing happened? More importantly, did I really want to forget? I went downstairs to the kitchen, trying to focus on routine tasks. The sound of coffee brewing was soothing, almost reminding me that life goes on. But when I heard his footsteps coming down the stairs, my heart tightened. I wasn't ready to see him, to face what awaited us. He entered the kitchen, hair tousled, face still sleepy. For an instant, our eyes met, and I saw a different light in them, something that took me by surprise. "Good morning," he said in a normal voice, but full of meaning. "Good morning," I replied, trying to sound casual, but the silence that followed was almost unbearable. As if we were both hesitating around what we didn't want to say. Each of us waited for the other to take the initiative. Finally, he broke the silence. "Are you okay?" It was a simple question, but loaded with meaning. I knew he wanted the truth. Was I okay with what happened? Did I regret it? Had it changed something between us? "Yes," I lied, trying to stay calm. But my eyes betrayed the truth. As he moved around the kitchen, every gesture seemed charged with significance. Every look was a silent invitation to continue what we had started. My attempt to ignore what happened grew less and less convincing. "John, maybe it's better if we don't talk about it," I said, before he could continue. He frowned, visibly hurt by my attempt to avoid the conversation. "Why?" he asked, his voice trembling. "We can't pretend nothing happened." My hands shook slightly. I hid them behind my back, trying to keep my composure, but he noticed. He always noticed. "I don't know what this means," I finally admitted in a voice barely louder than a whisper, "but we can't pretend nothing happened." John slowly nodded without taking his eyes off me. "What do we do?" he asked, his gaze determined. "How do we move forward when the past and present are so intertwined that nothing can change it?" He came closer until only a few inches separated us. I could hear the echo of my own heart in my ears. His hand rose, hesitating for a moment in front of my face. That gentle gesture made my whole being react. "Do you regret it?" he asked in a low, extended voice. I closed my eyes, trying to find the answer within myself. There was fear, yes. There were doubts, yes. But regret? No, I whispered, opening my eyes. "Me neither," he replied, looking at me intensely. "I know it's hard. I know it's wrong. But I also know it's real." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that it was all a misunderstanding. But I couldn't because he was right. He wanted something more. John leaned in slowly, giving me time to move away and say no. But I didn't. When we came together again, it was as if we were frozen in a slow, exploratory, gentle, tender moment, contrasting with the tremor of inevitability. "Are you okay?" he murmured, a slight smile appearing on his face. But what happens next? That question still hung in the air. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the answer, because I knew that together we would find a way, even if that path made sense only to the two of us. The next morning was like any other, but the weight of the decisions made the night before disrupted the usual routine. In the house, a different atmosphere reigned, as if every object now held a secret known only to us. And yet, I tried to convince myself that the day's routine would erase any trace of what happened. But how do you ignore the inevitable when every thought of him made my entire being react in unprecedented ways? Memories of him, the intensity of his gaze that night, everything lived inside me. John was the first to break the silence. I was in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, so ordinary, and he entered, looking calm but attentive. "Mom, we need to talk," he said in a firm voice, but with a hint of hesitation that betrayed his own uncertainty. I looked at him, not knowing what to say. Part of me wanted to leave, to avoid confronting reality, but another part knew we couldn't ignore what had developed between us. "Yes, we do," I replied more softly than intended. He approached slowly and stopped beside me, his hand lightly resting on the edge of the table. It was an almost imperceptible gesture, but to me, it was loaded with meaning. Everything seemed to carry more weight now. Every word, every silence. "I can't stop thinking about you," he finally admitted, looking at me with eyes that were no longer just my son's. Those words resonated in me in a way I couldn't deny. "I can't stop thinking about it either," I murmured. "But what does all this mean? How do we handle something that seems so forbidden and yet so inevitable?" He shook his head without looking away. "I don't know," John said, "but That was the question I dreaded, because the truth was, I had no answer. The only thing I knew was that when he was near me, the world became a smaller and faster place, where only the two of us existed. In the days that followed, we tried to keep living, but the tension between us only grew, like a flame refusing to die out. I found myself watching John more than I should, his way of running his hand through his hair, the smile that appeared when he found something amusing, even the way he moved around the house. Everything about him drew me in. One afternoon, as he worked on his projects, I heard his calm breathing. When our eyes met, a silence settled that seemed to last an eternity. He spoke first. "Mom, why does this seem so right?" His voice was soft, but full of meaning. I didn't know what to say, because deep down, I agreed. Even though everything in me screamed that it was wrong, the truth was that what felt right defied the eyes of the world. "I don't know," I finally said softly. "John,